So I'm going to explain some of the basic features of Cubase, and I'm using the Lite Edition number 5. There's a lot of other features that I don't have, but most of the basic features are here, and quite a few of the features that you won't necessarily use, and a lot of which I don't even know yet. But I'm going to explain some of the simple basic features of Cubase. So if you're new to Cubase, open up Cubase, and this is about what you'll see. And then you're going to go to Devices, and you're going to click on Device Setup at the bottom, and click on the left-hand side menu. Click on VST Audio Systems. Click up here on your ASIO driver, and you'll click on the sound device that you are going to use. In this case, I'm using ASIO DirectX Full Duplex driver. Click it. It'll ask you if you want to switch to that. Click Switch. Then click to the one below this, ASIO DirectX Full Duplex driver, and it'll show you your latency times for that particular driver. It shows you your inputs and outputs. I've already have them set up, but I'll show you how to set those up. So click OK, and go back to the device menu. Click on VST Connections. Go to the Inputs tab and click Add Bus. I've already got my bus, and it'll ask you if you want to do a stereo configuration and how many buses you want. Generally, you just want one. So I've already got mine, so I'm going to remove this bus. Okay, so then click over here and click on, if it's not already selected, click on the device driver that you're going to be using, the one that you just set up in device settings. And then over here you may need to set these to left and right. Click on your Outputs tab and do the same thing. Add your bus. Click over here and click on your device driver. Same thing over here. It'll show you your speakers, your left and right speakers. This one's going to be left, and this one was going to be right. So once you've got that set up, you should have the audio all set up in Cubase. So next we're going to add track, which is you right click right here and click Add Audio Track. There's several different kinds of tracks here. We're just going to work with the audio track for right now. Pops up a little notification, how many tracks you want, whether they're supposed to be mono or stereo. In my case, I'm going to use mono. And then it'll show you your speaker configuration. So click OK, and it'll add your track. And in this particular case, I've got to maximize this window. And you've got these little zooms over here. This particular one makes it wider and smaller. I like it about right there. This one here just zooms in on the audio, or zooms out. So you can adjust that according to your needs. And then whichever track, if you're working with multiple tracks, I'm only using one, but if you're working in multiple tracks, the track that is selected is going to have this red button enabled. It's called the Record Enable button, and that enables you to record on that particular track. So if you want to record on a different track, it'll give you the Record Enable on that track. So you click over here and it selects the first track. So I'm just going to delete this track because I don't need it, and leave that selected. This is the Monitor button. So if you select that, you can hear through your headphones or your speakers whatever you're going to be recording. It's listening back to your microphone. And then there's the Mute button and the Solo button. Those are mainly for playback audio. So we'll get to that in a little bit. These other buttons I'll get to also in a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do now is you click on Record, and I'm going to pull up a recording that I've already made so that I can show you what you can do with it. Activate the project because I've got two of them open. Okay, so here I've got two different tracks, and I want to put both of them on solo. That means they both will play. If this one's not on solo, it's automatically on mute, which means this is the only track I will hear. So I want both of them on solo so that I can hear them both. And it doesn't matter if the record enabled or not, because I'm not recording right now. So before I go into the effects, I need to explain a little bit about the Cubase's function events and whatnot. These are not waveform. It shows you the waveform here, but they're called events. Each of these is an event, and you notice how it's got these little handles on the sides to show that that's the event borders. So first, what you can do with these events, and automatically your select tool is selected up here. These are all the different tools that you can use. Each does a different thing. So if I want to, so I can hold Control down and I can select both of them, and you can do multiple things to both of them, or you can just keep one of them selected, or whatever you need to do. And then there's also up here auto scroll. You can click that. Basically, if you play back the music, or if you play back your track, then it'll keep scrolling with it. So if you've got this zoomed way in, it'll just keep on scrolling. As soon as it reaches the end of this, it'll start over back here and keep going. So you can always see where you're at. I use that sometimes, and sometimes I don't. This is snapping. So if I want to click on snapping, click over here, and these are the different types of snapping, different ways that these events can snap. You can snap to the grid or the relative grid events. You can snap to shuffle, magnetic cursor, grid cursor, events and cursor, events and grid and cursor. That's usually what I use. So let's say I want to move these two tracks to the start. There's this little white space here, and I want to move those to the start because they're not quite at the beginning. So you make sure your snapping's on, and then you click and you can drag, and it'll automatically snap to the beginning, so you don't have to figure out exactly where it needs to go. A very handy little feature. And then there's the event zooming. The simple way to do this for zooming in this way, there's this little bar over here. But then also, if you click up here and hold, or if you hold Shift down and put your mouse up in the timeline and click, and then you can drag down or up to zoom out. And if you want to zoom into a different part, hold it down. My Cubase locked up just a minute there. So let's try that again. Zoom up and down. If you can zoom into a different place. Oh no, that's just okay. So back up a little bit. Zoom. Don't hold Shift down, but if you click, you can do it there, or you can move your cursor over here and it'll zoom in over this. Zoom out a little bit. You can go and zoom in over here. Just a very handy zooming function. And your little scroll bar over here. Okay, so first one I'm going to explain the fading. So if I want to fade, I've got both of these tracks selected right now, and this little corner bracket up in here is the fader. So I drag this over here. You notice it did that to both of these tracks because I've got both of them selected, or both the events. So what happens when you go and play this back, it fades the end of it, and you can adjust how much it fades, by how much you drag. You can fade all this, or it'll slowly fade to all the way out. So if we want to just fade that much, you can fade on the beginning as well as the end. So let's try zooming up on here a little bit. So you could fade the beginning out there. Okay, so next I'm going to explain the inspector and the event info line. Okay, this over here, this panel over here is the inspector, and this here is the button to turn that on and off. You can show it or you can hide it. I usually keep it shown because it's a very useful piece of the program. There are multiple. If you just click on the track right here, it shows this information. Shows you your inputs and your outputs. Stereo out, left, stereo in, or mono in. And here's your record button and your monitor button and your mute and solo, and this is a read enable and write enable. I'll explain that in a little bit. This is auto fade settings, which I haven't really messed with much. It's basically for automatic fading. I haven't done much with that, so maybe in a later tutorial I can explain some about that. Okay, and then here's your volume, or your track volume, and then panning, left and right panning. And then here's a very handy function. It's time shift, and I'll explain some more about that later when we add reverb. Okay, so go down here and click on Inserts, and you can click on the power button here, and actually you're going to click on this little guy. I've already got some involved here, but you'll click on this little arrow, and it'll pop up. And then you click on the power button and click here, and no effect. Okay, let's do it this way. I'll just take these effects off so that I can show you. Click on there, and you can click on your effect, whatever effect you're going to apply. In this particular case, we'll do reverb. There's a reverb down here, and then there's delay, which is a different type of reverb. I'm going to leave it on no effect for now, and then I'll explain later what that's about. So equalizers, you can have different equalizers for these. These are all powered off, so if you hit the power buttons, actually leave the power buttons off and click on the little E here, and that pops up the equalizer and the inserts and the sends all in one box. So what you can do, here's your equalizer power buttons. So if we have a particular equalization that we want, we can go over here and I can drag this around, and you can listen to it while you're dragging this around to see what it's going to sound like. So that's the most convenient way, and then you can power on different ranges. You can do a bass range over here if you need a little more bass, and bring your, I don't know why it's acting kind of funny like this, but it's not acting like it usually should. At any rate, it's very handy. You can move this around, adjust your dynamics however you want, and then just like over here on the inserts, you can add your effects over here just like over there. So for now, I'm going to click power off on all these guys. We'll add equalization later. Power off of that, X out of that. Sends, these are basically what you're sending, and the destination and your outputs, how it's going to output. You don't need to set anything there. Click on channel, and you basically get a different view of the first one. Over here is these are all the equalizers. You can power them on and off like this, and just clicking the numbers. And then these are your inserts and sends and things like that. And then your volume and all that. So let's go to inserts and insert a reverb effect. So let's go to Reverb Roomworks SE. And first, let's hit the play so that I can hear this, and at the same time we can adjust the reverb to however we want, to make it sound like what we want. So I can go in here, adjust this down. It's got a little too much reverb, the time or the delay on it, and you can adjust the mix also. So, and then when you're ready, or you can just hit power off, and that bypasses it. Or this also bypasses the effect without turning it off. So if you click X out of there, I'll stop that. And same thing over here. If you click the little E next to the RoomWorks, it opens that dialog box. You can adjust your settings again if you need to. Or same thing, you can hit power off and it'll turn that off. Or the bypass. And then also you notice this here is changing colors. This is the bypass for that particular, for all of these insert effects. So if I've got several insert effects in here, this bypasses all of them. So if I add another one, if I just add that, let's say, that bypasses all the effects in that panel. And I don't want to do that right now, so I'm just going to power off or turn off this particular effect. Discard changes to that. Okay. So there's that. There's one way to do reverb. Another way, I'm just going to power this off so it's not interfering. Another way you can do reverb is click on the title up here, and that goes to this, and you can use the time shift also for reverb. Because I've got two tracks here, and they're both recording relatively the same thing, so I can select one track, or click over here, and over here you want to select one track or the other depending on which one you want, and you can time shift this a little bit, and you can type in here, double click on the numbers, and you can select exactly what you want, and then you hit play and hear it, and it might be too much, like 30 is too much in this case, so put in 20 and it'll be better effect. It just gives it a different kind of a time. So, and then you can even add this if you want more than that. You can add different kinds of effects and reverbs. So next I was going to cover equalizers. Okay, so I'll leave that on and click on equalizers and click. You can click the little E here, the channel settings, or you can click this E. They both do the same thing. They open up this the channel settings, and you can see over here now I've got the RoomWorks SE reverb effect enabled over here, so you can adjust that in here. Okay, so now if I hit play, it wasn't for the gifts exchanged or what's in it for me. Adjust this out to where it sounds good, which you want it to be. It was for the cross if it's clipping, then you have a problem. That day in Bethlehem. It was for the blood you shed for it. You can also manually adjust this down here. So that's the basics of the equalizer. These are different levels of different ranges, different frequencies, I should say. So I'll exit out of that, stop, and the read, write, enable buttons. These little guys here. This, by the way, is the bypass button for that equalizer. So if I hit bypass, it bypasses all of those equalizers. It basically discounts them. It doesn't use them. They're still on, but it doesn't use them. So I want to use those. Okay, on the read and write enable, those are basically for volume changes or panning, or if you go down here and click the little show hide animation in the corner of each track. Each track has that little show hide animation, and it's got the read, write, enable. So if I click on read, and if I'm using the volume, this particular one, it's already selected on volume, so I'll just leave it there. And then you go over here, and I can click the draw tool, and if I just click one there, or no, I don't want to do that. Okay, let's take the select tool again, and you want to bring this down here. Let's say this line is equivalent to the volume level. Higher is lower, or higher is louder, and lower is softer. So in this particular case, it's all the way as loud as I want it right here, and then it slowly tapers off to this point, and then it changes its speed of taper, and it goes at a slower pace here, and it gets quieter and quieter and quieter. By the way, all the way down at the bottom is off, basically. It's very quiet. And then on here, at this point, it slowly gets louder and louder again. So if you've got a quiet part here, maybe you can turn that around, and you can make this all the way as loud as you want it to be. Click on that little node, and you can drag it around. So let's say I've got, I'm going to go over here to the beginning of the track. Oops. Click on this little node, and I can bring that down, and that adjusts the level. So now it's playing at this volume, and it gets louder and louder and louder. Let's say I have a quiet spot here, and I want it to get louder, or you can take this node, and you can drag it, and by the way, it's snapping, see there? So if I don't want it to snap, I can turn off the snap feature, and then I can just drag it around wherever. So there, it gets louder pretty quickly, and then it slowly graduates to even louder. And then maybe I want it back down to quiet over here, so I can bring it back down to quiet, and it's causing problems because I've got the rest of it over here. So anyway, you can generally adjust it's a very useful function. You can adjust your volumes, or you can use the exact same method and adjust your panning. Top is left and bottom is right. So if you click on your little draw, and generally, well, your left right, if it's centered to start, if you've got it centered to start, it'll be in the middle because that's halfway between left and right. And if this here automatically takes that, and it boom jumps it up to left, and it'll tell you, if you click on that little node, it'll tell you how much left it is. You take it up and down, and it shows you that's all the way left, and that's all the way right. So you can tell the rate. It tells you the rate at which it's going, and as well as how much left and right it is. So if you want an interesting effect there, you can click here, add another node. You can do this kind of thing. Same function. It's a very useful function of Cubase, the automation, and you can automate many things. You can automate effects. You can automate reverb. You can automate the panning. You can automate the volume. Those are the panning and volume are the major ones, I'd have to say. And then if you click that and turn off the read, it basically bypasses that automation, so it doesn't do anything. But if you click read, then when it's playing, it'll use that. Write is basically, if you're recording, it will, if you're recording and you've got write selected or write enable, you can go to channel or something, or mixer. You can open the mixer in devices and click mixer, or push F3. And if you adjust this while you're recording or playing something, it will automate that for you. However you do this, it'll automatically create this automation line, and then you can go in there and edit it if you would like. So that's what the write and the read enable are for. The bypass effects, those are these buttons that just basically, this one bypasses the inserts or the reverb or whatever effects that you have enabled, and this bypasses the EQ. the EQ, like I said earlier. And then the last things I wanted to cover were saving and exporting. Okay, so if I want to save this, it's the same function. It pops up your little save box and you can type in where you want to save it. If I want to export, let's say I have this song all mixed and ready to go, then you want to click, I'm going to close this automation. Let's say I want the automation so it's still read enabled, so it'll record with that, or it'll play with that enabled, as well as these fades and everything. So you want to select everything that all the events that you'd like to export, and then you want to click on, I think default is P, which is setting the locators. The locators are these little white guys up here that select in the timeline. And on the other side of the timeline, let me zoom out here so we can see it. There's the end one. So this is basically the as far as it's how much Cubase, or you'd tell Cubase to export or play or record, or how much it uses, how much of the event is used. So you want to push P, I think is the default button for setting the locators, the left and right locators. And then you want to go and click File, Export, and then click Audio Mix Down, or it's F7. And then you can choose over here where you want it to go. If you want it to go to the project, set it to project name. It can be the same project name. You can choose your audio folder here where you want to save it to. There's the name if I want to save it to my desktop. Here's the file format. You can save it as a WAV or an AICF or FC file, AIFF file, MPEG, or Windows Media Audio. Those are just some of the simple formats that Cubase can work with. Because I have the Lite edition, it doesn't have the main, pretty much the main one I use is WAV file. I don't use any of these other ones. And then I can use another program and convert to mp3 or, you know, whatever the file format is that I need. These here are pretty much, you don't need to know much about. They're just general functions that are usually pretty unnecessary to know if you're a beginner at this. Here's sample rate. You can select all these different sample rates, and maybe another time I can explain what sample rates are if you don't know already. The bit depth, usually 16 bits, about what you want. You can select whether it needs to be a mono or stereo export. This will be a stereo export, and if you check that, it'll be mono export. Split channels, I don't usually use that. And then you just click export, and it'll export your file into a WAV. So there's some of the basics on using Cubase, and maybe I'll be back later or another time with another tutorial. Thank you for watching this.